Today I'm going to be making homemade mayo. What you need is mustard, a tablespoon of lemon juice, or you can use vinegar. Vinegar like apple cider vinegar would work well. And you need a quarter teaspoon of salt, 2 eggs, and oil. I like to use flax oil for my mayo. And the first thing actually that you want to do, you need 2 egg yolks. You don't use the whole egg, so you have to separate the yolk from the white. And if you don't know how to do that, it's really simple. You just need a little tool like this, which is a couple of bucks. And crack the egg right in there. And the white just kind of falls through, and you have to twirl it around a little bit. And then you want to put the egg yolk into a tall container like this. I'll do that for the other one. You want to try to use large eggs. 2 nice big yolks will work out well. Let me get that other. Yeah, sometimes you can, if you carefully put the yolk in there, the white, the last bit of the white will stay on this little gadget here. So you put the eggs in, and as I said, it's about 1 tablespoon of lemon juice and a teaspoon of your favorite mustard. You know, roughly, it doesn't have to be exact. And about a quarter teaspoon of salt. And then the last ingredient you want to put in there is oil. And you want to pour the oil in slowly because you want the egg yolks to stay on the bottom kind of undisturbed. You don't want them floating around up on the top. If they do become unsettled and float up to the top for whatever reason, just you can wait a minute to let them settle down to the bottom. If you get crazy with your oil pouring, can't control yourself. Now my tool of choice to make mayo is a stick blender, handheld immersion blender, whatever you want to call it. This is a Cuisinart Smart Stick. I used to make it in a blender, which is another common way to do it. The reason why I don't like using a blender to make mayonnaise is because you add all of your ingredients except for the oil, and then you turn your blender on low, and then you have to add the oil in very, 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 very slowly as it's blending. And if it's not quite slow enough, it doesn't quite work. And it does take a long, you really have to drip it in. It takes a long time. My arm starts hurting, and it doesn't always come out. So I found that the stick blender works much better, much easier. One thing, I used to use a full cup of oil, and probably the first 6 times I made it was fine, but then it started it was too loose at some point, and I decided just to reduce the amount of oil. So I just use a little bit less than a cup now. Somewhere between 3/4 of a cup and a cup, probably halfway between there. I think it's like 200 milliliters of oil, and it seems to be just right. So that's the way I do it. And then you want to just slowly put your blender in there so that you don't, stir anything up. And when I start to blend this, I'm just going to pulse it very slowly. You do have to You can't just turn it on and full force and keep it running because it won't come out. I'm going to pulse it a few times without really moving the stick blender at all. And then once you see that mayo is forming at the bottom of the container, you know, still go slowly, but you can kind of move the blender around at that point to incorporate the oil that's on the top, get that incorporated into the mayo. So here we go. You can see the mayo at the bottom. I have found that if I do it, the reason why I'm being careful and going slowly, I have found in the past, at least in my experience, if I go too fast, it just doesn't turn out, and it's kind of like a liquidy mess. But if I go real slowly like this, it usually works out fine. So now I'm just starting to tilt the blender back and forth a little bit. You can kind of see the little globs of mayo coming to the top. And you might not have to go this slowly. I just like to be careful because, like I said, there were a couple of times where it didn't work out. And I like it to work out, so take my time with it. Now I'm just going to lift it up a little bit to get the rest of the oil incorporated in there. Looks like we've got mayo. Looks pretty good. And this tall container actually comes with the Smart Stick blender when you buy it. So there's mayo. With the flaxseed oil, it comes out kind of a golden color just because of the color of the oil. You can add anything you want to it. You can make a flavored mayo by adding a chopped up clove of garlic, or you can put fresh herbs in there. I mentioned vinegar, apple cider vinegar is nice in there. More salt if you like it saltier, or pepper. But that's pretty much it. And the other thing actually to note is that you cannot cut this recipe in half. I tried at one point. I thought, well, I just want a little bit of mayo, so I'll just make half of a batch. But it doesn't work with one egg yolk. I think it's because, you know, there's only so much oil in there, and I don't know the chemistry of it, but it just doesn't work cutting it in half. So you've got to keep it as the full recipe. Fresh mayo tastes really good. If you've never had it before, and you happen to have one of these little stick blenders, Let's give it a try at some point. It's really tasty.